And what are you singing at that point? What's the word that you're singing?
Verfolgung,
Yeah.
persecution.
Yeah, okay, so that's a pretty heavy word. And the name of this chord, not that really matters at all, is the Neapolitan. It's the Neapolitan chord. And I find this harmony endlessly fascinating because it's major. Right? Play it again. Just to be clear. So that should make us feel happy, right? But it doesn't. It's like a cold shudder down my spine. There's something really, really chilling about this chord. Bach did not invent this chord. It was beloved of many composers, especially Italians. That's probably why it's called Neapolitan, right? But it's amazing how effective it is, right? And that Bach decides that he wants to create this right when you talk about the persecution, right? And so I think what we heard in this really spectacular, vivid performance that we just got was respond to the text and also responsiveness to that fantastic harmony.
I'll also add to that. I mean, just it's the interesting thing always about a Neapolitan is that here we have a B flat major chord in first inversion, but what key are we in?
A minor.
Yes, that it's the idea of it built in on the flat and second degree. The other thing is that this is one of the rare recitatives that I know of, I haven't combed through them all, that has two 6/4-3 chords. You see a lot of 6/4-2s, but you don't see many 6/4-3s that's built on the third scale degree. And it happens twice. It's always when we're talking about suffering or persecution. It happens on Leiden, on that C sharp, and then again, in Verfolgung still, that moment, which is so fantastic because there's also this sense of things being a little bit, the walls closing in Verfolgung, the B flat, I think you can draw our ear to everything being a little condensed and cramped there, in a way.
Yeah.
Great. I think you should, because it's so short and we didn't spend much time, I think you should do it one more time. And I'm going to challenge you, do something different.
Okay.
Don't get stuck in what you're doing.
Mein Jesus schweigt zu falschen Lügen stille, uns damit zu zeigen, dass sein erbarmensvoller Wille vor uns zum Leiden sei gereicht und dass wir in der gleichen Pein ihm sollen ähnlich sein und in Verfolgung stille schweigen.
So we, as you probably can tell from the program, we're walking through the piece basically chronologically. So the next one we have is closer to the end. I think it might be good for you also to set up our context.
Sure. Yes. So at this point, all the charges have been made. Decision has been made. Jesus shall be crucified. And this is after he has been led to Golgotha, or the place of skulls where the crucifixion happens. Jesus, along with two thieves, have been crucified. And the people and the priests are saying that, you know, if you have made the claim that you will come back, go ahead. Now's your chance. Prove to us what you were saying. And this recitative is, again, a commentator, an observer, commenting on this horrific act that has just happened. This beautiful Lord of Glory is shamefully being punished and is dying here. He who is supposed to be the blessing and the salvation of the world is now placed upon this hill, on this cross, as a punishment, as a curse, for just being who he is, and basically saying, this is so unjust, this is so cruel, and I am so touched by it, by its horrific nature. It's just so moving to the person who is singing this recitative. And then after this, the alto aria comes in and basically says that his arms are outreached even on the cross, and they are outstretched for you, for us, and come, you can still have faith in him and he can still save you. So it turns from this despair to this sort of, no, he is still there, even in death. Where is it? There it is.
Ach, Golgotha, unselges Golgotha, der Herr der Herrlichkeit muss schimpflich hier verderben. Der Segen und das Heil der Welt wird all sein Fluch ans Kreuz gestellt. Der Schöpfer Himmels und der Erden soll Erd und Luft entzogen werden. Die Unschuld muss ihr schuldig sterben. Das geht meine Seele nah. Ach, Golgotha, unselges Golgotha.
Oh my God, there's so many places to start with this piece. Tell us about the instrumentation.
Yes, so this is obviously with continuo, and similarly to the previous two arioses that we heard, it is with oboe, but this time it is oboe da caccia. To be perfectly honest, I don't really know much of the difference between the d'amore, the regular, and the da caccia, so I'd love to learn more.
Well, you know, we
Why are we here?
yes. In terms of the various classes of oboes, we will have some of them in our concert, and so we'll be hearing the differences as we go farther in. Of course, this weekend we had English horn, which is the same range as the oboe da caccia and is what stands in for the oboe da caccia in a modern orchestra. They're often referred to as the tenor oboe. So it's largely a question of range. In other words, as a tenor instrument, it goes lower. It can sit, you know, squarely into that octave between middle C and the C below. Whereas the oboe d'amore is an alto oboe. It has, I think, 4 notes below the regular oboe? It doesn't have that many more, but it has a slightly darker color. It's a kind of a less sweet of a sound. And then you rarely hear it, but the oboe that has no second name is sometimes considered a soprano oboe in the soprano register. So, you know, we didn't really mention in Mara's recit what the color of the oboe d'amore might be providing. Again, without having it here, it's hard to put it in our heads, but there's a very pointed, a very reedy quality. Obviously, they're reed instruments. And you add to that the fact that it's sitting in this low, it never sounds like a bassoon, but it's sort of on the way to a bassoon, right? So you have that. Again, like in Mara's piece, we have a figuration that is continuous. Right, can you give us a little example of that? Right? And I think I'd be curious, to both of you, if that sound, just that by itself, suggests an emotion.
Well, it's definitely not like Mara's Arioso. That one had the more, what was it, the sobbing, the tears falling.
Yeah.
This doesn't sound like that at all.
It really doesn't.
No,
And it is major, right?
it doesn't sound like it.
And it doesn't sound like it's major. Well, that's because we have all these sevens, right? But it's definitely not minor, right? So we don't clearly hear what for us easily is a minor key is sad and a major key is happy. But you know, here we have this thing.
Yeah.
This thing. I think in order to kind of set up the strangeness of this piece, I'd like you to actually very quickly walk us through what happens before. So if you could play just from here, it's all in unison here. So that's the end of the big chorus. And they say, you know, he said, I am God's son. Ich bin Gottes Sohn. And that's E minor. Then the next chord is desgleichen schmähten ihn auch die Mörder, die mit ihm gekreuziget waren. And now we're in C minor. That didn't take very long. Actually, Eric Chafe mentioned this on Friday. He mentioned this very, very rapid shift from E minor, which is the opening key of the Matthew Passion, to C minor, which is the closing key of the Matthew Passion. Mm. And it happens right here. Mm. So the most important shift in the entire Matthew Passion is effected in the little tiny 3-bar evangelist recit. And it happens on that pivot note, which is the high A flat. Die mit ihm gekreuziget waren. So the first piece of concerted music, you know, music that's orchestrated, is this recit that Ingrid is singing. And I thought you walked us through the text really beautifully. I think this text is an incredible piece of poetry. Mm-hmm. And here I think we see what I was referencing earlier about Picander and his play with words. He's setting up these oxymorons, right? The Segen und das Heil der Welt wird als ein Fluch ans Kreuz gestellt, right? So the curse and the blessing, right? Der Schöpfer Himmels und der Erden soll entzogen werden, right? So we are in, this is one of the most remarkable pieces by Bach, I know, this little movement, because he doesn't give us a simple thing to feel, right? We felt grief and then we felt love. We felt shock and horror and sort of responsibility. Like we can understand that. This is hard to understand. It's hard to know what to feel.
Yeah.
And your role, the most remarkable thing for me, your role changes in the course of this piece, because you start out proclaiming to the world, look at what is happening here. This does not make sense. This is, we are in a world turned upside down. The entire universe is being turned upside down. It is much greater than the personal loss of the followers of Jesus. This is an outrage against nature. It's an outrage against the cosmos, right? So we're going to hear you sing this again, and I want to challenge you to do a couple of things. You have to embody that kind of righteous indignation, but I also want to challenge you to show the oxymorons in how you change the color of your voice and the articulation, right? So let's hear it again.
Golgotha, unsel'ges Golgotha, der Herr der Herrlichkeit muss schimpflich hier verderben. Der Segen und das Heil der Welt wird all sein Fluch uns Kreuz gestellt. Der Schöpfer Himmels und der Erden soll Erd und Luft entzogen werden. Die Unschuld muss hier schuldig werben. Das geht meine Seele nah. Ach, Golgotha, unsel'ges Golgotha.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, it's fun. I can't believe that anything less would do, right? And Ingrid has a tremendous musical imagination, and she really found so many different ways to walk us through that text. You know, dynamics, vowel colors, shapes of phrases, articulations. And you changed something that is very important to me, and I really like what you found, which is this line that just breaks my heart every time I hear it. Das geht meine Seele nah, right? So like I said, I said that I believe her role changes in the course of this movement. She starts out as this like prophetess, seer, looking out at the world and saying, the world has been destroyed, the cosmos has been violated, right? There's something wrong with the world. And then she says, I can't stand it. That pierces my soul, is kind of closer to how I feel about that line. It's like we don't see her as a person in the opening. She's showing us these things that make us almost see her as an impersonal force, the voice of the universe itself. And then suddenly she says, I can't take it. I can't take it. And and what she did, which I loved, is you dropped your voice almost to a whisper at that point. It's very brave, right? That's an incredibly brave thing to do in a passion, but I think it's essential, right? That is glorious. So, and I will give Ryan a chance to say something, but the one thing we haven't talked about yet is the harmonic motion that we're going on too. So we know that we've moved from E minor, 1 sharp, to C minor, 3 flats. We start here in A flat, and then it just gets worse. If by worse you mean that the flat side of the world is the sort of muddy, corrupted, evil side of the world. So I don't know if you can walk us through these chords quickly, but so we have, right, and then. Oh, you got one. Okay, so we're here. We've reached this kind of a cadence, and we're at G flat minor. And there's a 4-2, which we know is going to push us down. Wait, did you get past measure 9 already?
That was just getting
Okay.
to 9.
And there's 9, and the note in the bottom of, and that's why you guys have scores, right? C flat. Now I will tell you, C flat is not that weird for Bach, but I think here it has a huge significance, because where did we just cadence, like several bars ago? C, right? Now, even C is not low enough. We've just pushed the floor of the ground down to C flat. And there's only one more step we could possibly go down, and that's F flat, which we do eventually reach. Right. So the very last thing that I can ask you to do to improve that performance is to not be polite about coming off the G natural at the very, very end. You gotta hang there and make the dissonance just insist upon it. So I'm gonna ask you to sing Die Unschuld muss hier schuldig sterben.
Can I ask one thing? That I feel, I mean, what you did at 12 was quite stunning, and it can be even more so if there's a little bit more bite and opinion to Die Unschuld. It's the only time you sing 2 quarters in a row in the entire piece up to that point.
Sorry. What was the question?
Just pointing that
Oh,
out.
we're just pointing it out. Sorry.
Yes. And it needs to be
Yeah.
intentional.
Okay.
And then just, take us as intimate as you can go on measure 12.
Okay.
And then when we come back, what are you asking?
Where are we starting?
We're starting downbeat of 10.
Okay.
Die Unschuld muss hier schuldig sterben. Das geht meine Seele nah. Ach, Golgotha, unsel'ges Golgotha.
I think in a performance we probably have a little bit of a retard,
Okay.
finally, to relax
Okay.
at the end. Can we just do the pickup to 14? And we'll just try that. And Golgotha. No taper,
Okay.
no diminuendo. Just hang on to it.
And I even think if it bleeds into
Okay.
the final A flat sonority,
All
so
right.
be it.
So here's halfway through 13.
Ach, Golgotha, unsel'ges Golgotha.
It's uncomfy.
Yeah, I think you need to be uncomfortable and you need to make us feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
This movement should make us squirm in our seats. I mean, the thing is, it's unbelievably beautiful, but that's not what Bach wants it to be. He wants it to blow our minds, right? He's like, what? What?
Yeah.
What's that? Right? And the words, the harmonies, and then your performance, right? Because you're the one who brings it to life, along with the conductor and the oboes.
And if I can add
everything
two
else.
other things about the color of this too, not at all related to your performance, but just for the listeners to paint what the soundscape is here. It's not often that Bach writes this, where he has specifically the violon or the bass, the 16-foot continuo bowed instrument, playing something different than the cello. And the cello plays pizzicato. If you can you just draw our ear to just the bass line once and kind of pound out the pedal tones that happen in the left hand? And it's unrelenting throughout the whole thing. There's that color. The other thing I'll note is that this is sort of it's 12 tone. Every single chromatic tone in the scale are present in this one recitative as he works his way to the flat side of the world.
Right.
Yeah, stunning.
Cool.
All right, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Chime in here on this one too. We can do it together.
Yeah.
Anything you have a lot to say?
Do you want to ask him to do?
Oh, yes, Stephen, can you tell us who you are and sort of set the stage, as it were, for this?
Yes. I am a narrator or a spectator of some sort, right? I don't think I'm a named character.
Okay.
think-
You're not literally named, no.
No. Just before this, the evangelist had some recit. Jesus is dead. Spoiler. And there's a wealthy man has just went and spoke to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body to be returned. And Pilate has said, give them the body. I keep referencing evening time. There's this rhetoric of evening time, evening time, evening time. I think I say it 4 times, if not more. The aria that follows this is Mache dich mein Herz rein. Make thyself clean my heart, I will myself entomb Jesus. It's quite close to the end. I think there's 5 or 6 pieces after this. I'm not sure if there's anything else.
Just so that we have in our ear, what's happening in the instrumentation?
Instrumentation is continuo, violin 1 and 2, and viola. So more strings.
Isn't there overtone?
In the aria.
In the aria, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Not in the rest.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's actually English. In the aria, it's 2 English horns that join and double the violins. But
Right.
in the
Not here.
recitative, you're right, it's just
Got it.
the pillow of strings.
Which suits, because it's evening time, it's quiet. Should we give it a go?
Go, give it a go, yes.
Am Abend, da es kühle war, ward Adams Fallen offenbar. Am Abend drücket in der Heiland nieder. Am Abend kam die Taube wieder und trug ein Ölblatt in dem Munde. O schöne Zeit! hat sein Kreuz vollbracht. Sein Leichnam kämmt zur Ruhe. Ach, liebe Seele, bitte du, geh, lasse dir den Toten Isum schenken. O heilsames, o köstliches Angedenken.
Yeah.
Jumping at some
Yeah,
musical
yeah,
things.
yeah. So, he gets two O phrases.
Ah.
Oh, heilsames. Oh.
Köstlich.
But yeah, let's start with this evening thing. Do you know why evening is so important here?
Not in this context.
Yeah, so in the preceding recit, it's actually quite several measures before, we have this story of the body of Jesus being taken down from the cross. And then there's kind of a little conclusion to that. And then the evangelist says, Am Abend aber kam ein reicher Mann from Arimathea. So in the evening, however, that happens to be an incidental piece of the story. It doesn't really matter at what time he showed up, right? I mean, it was the end of the day, and that's how long it took for the crucifixion to complete itself.
Yeah.
But what Picander does is he takes that little suggestion and he creates this unbelievable poem. He starts out by telling us things about that has nothing to do with the crucifixion. So the first thing he tells us is what?
Adam's fall is made manifest.
Right. In the Garden of Eden, in the evening when it was cool. We didn't need that detail either, thank you, Picander. That's when God confronted Adam and Eve and said, you have eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? So that happened.
Yeah.
And then, in the next line, am Abend drücket ihn der Heiland nieder. So what else happened in the evening?
The Saviour overwhelmed himself, or overwhelmed.
So this is actually thinking back to something we already heard in the story. This is when Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane bows himself down and says, you know, if this cup might pass from me. And then he says, no, I will drink from the cup. So that's another thing. And then the third one.
The dove returns with an olive branch.
And who is that dove and in what story does that happen?
It's an excellent question. I'm not sure. I'm a lapsed Catholic.
That's okay. That's all right. This is Noah's flood.
Okay.
So we are looking, the first one we looked all the way back to, you know, what for Christians is the beginning of time, the Garden of Eden. Then we had something very recent, 2 days ago. And then we have the message of peace, when the dove, after the flood is over, comes back with an olive branch, which means dry land was found and God's wrath is over, right? So you put these three images together for us. You've taken us way out of the story.
Yeah,
right
totally.
now we're not thinking about dead bodies and burials. We're thinking about what can happen in the evening. I said to Stephen earlier, it's like a Schubert art song. You know, it's just this amazing richness of imagery and semantic depth, right? And then the next thing you say, actually you had 4 O phrases, because then you say what?
Oh, beautiful time, or time so fair.
Right, right. So,
Oh, evening hour.
setting the scene, right? Oh, schöne Zeit. We are in the evening now, and it's cool, and it's beautiful, right? And then you finally move on to tell us what the significance of evening is in this context.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I was like, yes, I do. The pact of peace is now complete with God, for Jesus has filled his cross. Jesus has died for our sins, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, and of course you all have the text. We don't need him to reproduce the text for us. Here is, I think, I've had debates with people I greatly respect about what these next lines might be signifying.
Mm-hmm.
Because you say, go, soul, ask for the dead Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, some people say, aha, this is Joseph of Arimathea. This is a character.
I was thinking maybe that could be the character from before, but
Right.
Yeah.
Some people want to just go right there because the reaction and the narrative right here is basically saying, I'm going to do that very thing, right? But I still believe that you are the contemporary listener at this moment in the story and say, I could do that too. I could ask for his body. I could bury him in my own heart, which is an incredible resonance with the story that we were talking about way, way earlier in Mara's, the aria that follows Mara's Arioso, where I will give you my heart and you will sink inside of it. Now you are laying out your heart as the burial plot for Jesus at this point. So that creates, I think, it's like double vision. You know, in one way, we're seeing him as that character in the story who just asked for the dead body, and he's an incredibly thoughtful and poetic rich man. But we also see him as not you, right? We're sort of seeing both at the same time, and that I think is one of the great powers of how this levels of time work in the Matthew Passion, that sometimes the levels get blurred.
yeah,
Right? And this text, as I pointed out to you, it's I mean, even the poetry itself is so beautiful that you almost, you know, it's just these images are so beautifully etched in the words. That we haven't even talked about the music, right? Yeah. And the effect that the music has to change the mood of the moment. And I'm going to let Ryan jump in here.
Great. You know, I'll also mention one other thing about the time element, which I don't know how much we've talked about, but of course in St. Matthew Passion, there are inherent in the piece are three different levels of time. There's the biblical text, there are the chorale tunes, and then there's the poetry of the cantor. And in this, it's like how many elements of time can we have even in the first three statements? Yeah. Right? We talk about the fall of Adam. We talk about Noah's flood. We talk about Gethsemane, the Garden of Gethsemane, and then we talk about what just happened, all the while by a poet who's contemporary. Yeah. And it is this, and in the orchestration, we also have, it's almost this, I always feel like there's a blurring of pulse, just like there's a blurring of time, which, as beautifully as Wesley is playing, no pianist could recreate that halo of sound that we get from a string ensemble. And let me see what your vocal score looks like. Could you play for us once, not the right hand, not the 16ths?
Just the harmony.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you a tempo just because I think it's important. Pam said something, and she and I talked about this earlier. I'm going to come back to you. I'm all over the place here. But I always think of betrachte, which is the Arioso in the St. John Passion that precedes Ervega, the tenor aria. Pam referenced it in the beginning of this masterclass. I always, when I coach singers, I tell them, it's not Bach, it's a Schubert song. Sing it like a Schubert song. This is the same thing.
Okay.
And I think what's so easy for a singer, because of where it's going harmonically, and I know there's still some things in it that are still perhaps a little slightly unfamiliar, I'm sure you'd like another crack at.
I would love to
Yes.
myself.
Is finding the line in the lyricism like it's a Schubert song in the midst of it. And I think what will help is not necessarily feeling the pa, 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 the 16th notes, but listen to what Wesley's going to play in about, let me think, about 3 and 4. Does that make sense? If you can feel there's a lyricism to these inner string parts. When I rehearse this with an orchestra, I always start with just the seconds, violas and continuo, so they feel that line.
Yeah.
And if that has a strong foundation, the first violins just sort of, they're like evaporating, they're hovering above that foundation.
It's the breeze rustling in the leaves of the trees.
Yes, and the cool of night.
The cool of night.
Yes. So I want you to do this again, and I want you to think about 3 things,
Yep.
in addition to some of those spots that I'm sure you'd like another crack at, in those corners,
Yes.
is line.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I'm getting away from what the text is saying, always in the back of your mind remembering that, but from a vocal musical standpoint, how long of a line can you create? Number 1. Number 2, sing it with the earnestness and simplicity of a Schubert song.
Yep.
And you have permission to do whatever you feel in the moment, how you respond to your commentary on O schöne Zeit.
Yep.
You just stated these things that happened, and then it's almost like the poet had a moment to step aside and say, oh my God.
That totally feels like that. And then
Yes.
he's like, oh wait, I'm writing.
And the decision I think you have to make is it a public moment in private, or is it a private moment in public? So I want you to just up through that, up through the first big G major cadence before you go on to Jeffrida.
Yeah.
9. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever the measure is, 9, yeah. And if we can try that tempo, which just has a little bit more sense of forward direction to it,
Yeah.
I think it'll help.
I think so.
Am Abend, da es kühle war, ward Adams Fallen offenbar. Am Abend drücket in der Heiland nieder. Am Abend kam die Taube wieder und trug ein Ölblatt in dem Munde. O schöne Zeit, o Abendstunde.
Great. I want to go back and do a little bit again. Just Wesley, can you check the chord on the 4th beat of bar 8?
Yes, I missed that.
Yeah, okay. You're going to do it again.
Of course.
Can you enjoy the word
Mm-hmm.
even longer, especially when you have it on the A natural in bar 5? I want you to sort of just sink into the sound in a way.
Mm.
That's the first thing. The second thing is, will you speak your opening 2 phrases? Just speak it as though it's poetry.
Yes. And
Out of time. In German, yes.
Yes, of course. Am Abend, da es kühle war.
I want you to do it again, and I want you're painting a scene for us.
Mm.
Take us there.
Okay. Am Abend, da es kühle war, ward Adams Fallen offenbar. Am Abend drücket in der Heiland nieder. Am Abend kam die Taube wieder und trug ein Ölblatt in dem Munde. O schöne Zeit,
Sing that again. Now sing it from the top. And when you get to a schöne Zeit, try something different.
Okay.
Am Abend, da es kühle war, ward Adams Fallen offenbar. Am Abend drücket ihn der Heiland nieder. Am Abend kam die Taube wieder und trug ein Ölblatt in dem Munde. O schöne Zeit, o Abendstunde, der Friedenschlust ist nun mit Gott gemacht, denn Jesus hat sein Kreuz vollbracht. Sein Leichnam kömmt zur Ruhe. Ach, liebe Seele, bitte du, geh, lasse dir den Toten Jesum schenken. O heilsames, o köstliches Angedenken.
I think the idea that you had on Schöne Zeit was stunning.
Mm.
Yeah.
No.
I know you're dying to say something, but I'm going to ask you a question first. Sein Leichnam kommt zur Ruhe. Ach, liebe Seele. Will you speak that once
Yes.
again?
Sein Leichnam kommt.
I want you to do it again. And I want you to, in your head, have an intent, an opinion, a point of view. What is this about to you personally?
Sein Leichnam kommt zur Ruhe. Ach, liebe Seele, bitte du, geh, lasse dir den Toten Jesum schenken. O heilsames, o köstlich Angedenken.
Yes. Now, can you go back to bar 9 on Der Friedens and see if you can make that happen after this almost heartbreakingly triumphant E-flat major cadence on Vollbracht?
Yes.
And then there's that shift. Whatever you just did speaking it, all you have to do is speak it on pitch.
Okay. From
Der Friedensschluss ist nun mit Gott gemacht, denn
Take your time.
Jesus hat sein Kreuz vollbracht. Sein Leichnam kommt zur Ruhe. Ach, liebe Seele, bitte du, geh, lasse dir den Toten Jesum schenken. O heilsames, o köstliches Angedenken.
Yeah. You know, the next step, I think we intentionally moved the tempo forward a little bit because I wanted you to get a sense of the line.
I think it's.
I think now the next step is to maybe relax into it a little bit more, but maintain that sense of line.
Yeah.
I think that both worlds can exist at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah, I think a couple of other elements that we haven't touched on yet. Remember the restlessness of the harmony that we felt in the very first of these ariosos. We didn't know what key we're in.
Mm-hmm.
It just kept moving and moving and moving. What do we have in the bass here? We have 4 measures of nothing but G. right? And in fact, if you scan through your score, you'll see that there's a lot of these long, long notes. And so Bach creates this sense of rest, of stasis, of calm by simply slowing down the harmonic motion. And he does that by basically saying, no matter what's happening above, we are in place, right? I think in the course of these 4 pieces that we've learned, we can understand the high significance of the power of that, right? To just be at home as opposed to not at home and searching, your piece, right? That is remarkable,
Yeah.
right? And then there's one thing that you can catch, I think, a little bit better when you get into this Sein Leichnam kem Soru.
Yeah.
And then it's not on the beat, the ach.
I think Amanda.
It's ach.
Yes.
It's off the 4th beat, so that it's as personal as the statement that Ingrid had.
Yeah.
We suddenly, instead of you again narrating deep time to us, the Garden of Eden, Noah's flood, we don't know who this person is who's bringing our minds to these beautiful places. Suddenly you become an individual, right when you say, ah.
And I will add to that, he comes, yes, there's this great moment too that if you take out the first violins in that moment, with the body, everything comes to rest in C major. And then when it becomes personal on the and of 4, you give us the 7th there. We've heard it in the violin, but it just sort of passed by because there was this sense of settling there. And then you're...
Right. So I think the last thing that I want to say, this is, as Stephen said, is the final aria in the Matthew Passion. This is the final Arioso. Remember what Ingrid did to us. She turned the world upside down, right? She showed us a world that has been corrupted and perverted. And now what this movement does is it puts it back again.
Yep.
It's really unbelievably powerful. He was singing, I was thinking Schubert, but I was also thinking opera. I was thinking, the thing that we haven't said yet, and perhaps what we will finish the night on, is that why might some people, like me, not think we learn anything more about the St. Matthew Passion when we stage it? Because what is happening here is a drama of the mind. That the huge things that are going on are internal. And the only way that we can feel that is to keep it in the level of the mind, the heart. And when you put characters on stage, we actually lose that, right? It makes us feel like those are other people who are having those feelings, right? And maybe we empathize with them, but when it's a drama of the mind, we are implicated. We become the person who says, das geht meine Seele nah. Or the person who says, liebe Seele, I get to do this, right? Every single one of us is what Bach is saying to us. We can step into these roles. And the thing I want to leave you with is I think that the Ariosos do this in a way that is remarkably intimate. And because of their form, much more personal than the arias. You know, we get distracted in the arias with structure and instrumentation and large-scale phrasing, and you know, they're overwhelmingly beautiful, but these Ariosos are, I think, the moments that really touch our hearts. So I thank you, and please come back for the next events in our schedule. We have a fascinating panel discussion on Wednesday evening on why we do what we do at Emmanuel Music, why we play Bach on modern instruments. And on Friday night, I'm excited to welcome the scholar Wendy Heller, who is going to give a talk on listening to the female voice in Bach cantatas. And then, of course, we have our open rehearsal on Saturday and culminating in our showcase concert Sunday evening. Thank you very much.